And we can get started. So I'll just let everyone know that these sessions contain really general information and advice. We don't intend to substitute any kind of individual treatment advice. If you do have questions that relate specifically to your individual medical management or your disease, always go to your doctor or healthcare provider. But also in saying that, I'll try help you out with any questions you have in relation to this session. And so today we're going to be talking about what is mindfulness. You might see it come up a lot because it is one of the most widely recognized pain relief techniques we can be using in self-management. We will be talking about how it works. We'll talk about the benefits, some of the evidence behind it, and we'll also go through some of the interventions and strategies and put them into practice altogether. So why don't we start off and talk a little bit more about what mindfulness actually is. So for those who don't know, mindfulness is defined as a mental state that's achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment while calmly acknowledging, accepting our own feelings, our thoughts, and bodily sensations. So another way to kind of put this is that it's our ability to actually be fully present in the moment, be aware of where we are, who we're with, what we're doing, and not being overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on within us or around us. So there are so many different ways we can be practicing this, many formal ways, informal ways, but we're going to show you some strategies tonight. So to start this session, what I want to do is actually, take 2 minutes to actually have a practice of a mindfulness video. It's going to be guided. So if you stay with me here, we're going to press play and just tune into this mindfulness technique here.
If it's comfortable for you, let's begin by taking a gentle deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And with that exhalation, adopting a comfortable posture of awareness, returning the breath to its natural rhythm, and allowing your attention to gently drop into this present moment. And without turning or looking around, just lightly bringing into your awareness all that's in your surrounding space. And with your next out-breath, allowing your focus to fall onto one specific object that's in your field of vision. And it's not an intense stare, so just maintaining it as a very soft focus. And this is a gentle practice, so if at any point the eyes become fatigued, allow yourself to gently close them for a moment or two, and then reopening them, nice and easy. Noticing as any thoughts come and go, and just returning the attention back to your object. And now letting the focus zoom back out again, being aware of your surroundings, perhaps blinking a few times, allowing this cultivated focus to follow you into your next activity.
So that was just a very brief example of how mindfulness can be practiced. And so has anyone heard of the saying, time flies when you're having fun? And this can be a form of mindfulness as well. When you're fully engaged in something, you're enjoying the present moment activity, and then all of a sudden you're looking around and thinking, wow, that went quick. Mindfulness is all about that. It's about being engaged in each moment as opposed to getting distracted with maybe concerns about the past, maybe even about the future. If you're someone who worries about the future or gets caught up in reactivity. So there are probably moments throughout the day where you are mindful and present. So if you think about your hobbies or things that you enjoy doing, people you enjoy catching up with, then there's a pretty good chance that when you're doing them and you're relaxed and you're happy and you're engaged with all your senses, that's a form of mindfulness that you could be practicing. But being present and engaged is not only enjoyable, it actually increases the performance of that and other activities as we learn to really focus and be present, listen more effectively. We can study more effectively, have more productive, enjoyable conversations, connect with people more effectively. There's a lot of different benefits to mindfulness. But to understand it, I think it is worthwhile going over and highlighting the stress response and how different parts of the brain are actually involved here. So what I want to introduce to you on this slide is the 3-part brain. Has anyone heard of this before? Is anyone familiar with the concept of the lizard brain, the mammal brain, and the human brain? Yep. So the lizard brain, for those who don't know, it pretty much all encompasses the brainstem and the cerebellum. So I want you to think of this part of the brain as being the autopilot section of the brain. So the brainstem is a sort of automatic control center for several different involuntary actions of the body. So it controls the heartbeat, our breathing, our blood pressure, and many other different reflexes and processes in the body. The cerebellum is also what controls our balance and movement. It also has a very central role in our fight or flight response. And that's something you're going to hear time and time again when we're talking about stress response. When we're in fight or flight, there's no thinking, it's just doing. So it's actually an adaptive part of our brain. It's part of survival. And its role is to really just keep us safe. So if we're in the zoo and a lion escapes and we're being chased by a lion, it's our fight or flight system that's going to kick in. This is why we can get our heartbeat increasing, blood pressure increases, breathing increases, all these things start happening. And so all our senses will be heightened. With the second part of the brain, when we're talking about the mammalian brain, it includes the limbic system. So I want you to think of this system as a collection of structures that are involved in processing all our emotions, all our memories. And I guess it's a part of the brain that's involved in behavioral and emotional responses. Especially when it comes to behaviors we need to survive that lion escaping the zoo. It's also responsible for the behaviors of feeding, reproduction, caring for our young, and of course the other kind of behaviors that come with a fight or flight response. So this part of the brain is what really serves as an adaptive function of memory. We need to be able to actually remember things that have harmed us so that when they pop up again, we know how to act and behave and keep ourselves safe. So it kind of allows us to change our behavior or take different actions or the same actions. And to add to this, it really just depends on how dangerous the thing is. There'll be a degree of emotion that's actually attached to it to ensure we feel unsafe. So this is where feelings of fear, worries, scaredness, all come about from. So when we feel unsafe, it's this system that triggers the lizard brain, which is responsible for that fight or flight response. So both the lizard and mammalian brain, they work together. They want to keep us safe. Sometimes they can be way too vigilant though. So they can actually start to see danger where they didn't before, or overestimate the severity of danger. So when the fight or flight response is activated by this part of the brain, there's a lot of changes that physiologically happen in our body. So things like circulation becomes hyperdynamic, ventilation rate increases to saturate red blood cells. There's a rapid release of hormones that controls things like sugar metabolism, fat metabolism. Blood is sent to peripheries away from the gut. So this is why sometimes you lose an appetite when you're really stressed or you're ready to fight or flight. But it's this system, the fight or flight response, that's designed to be switched on only ever so often, but then be switched off again. We don't want that fight or flight persisting or continuing on. So the human brain, so with the cerebrum or the prefrontal cortex, it's a part of the brain that provides us with rationale, organization, abstract thought, higher reasoning, just higher order executive functioning in general. But it's unfortunate because when the lizard and mammalian brains are switched on, this part of the brain actually switches off. So unfortunately, in modern life today, in our environment, we get so caught up in things. We can get so anxious, preoccupied about what may or may not happen in the future, or we keep reliving past events so much that it doesn't actually matter that these events are real or in our imagination. Just thoughts or feelings can actually trigger the stress response, and the triggers can either be internal or external to us. So stress, anxiety, and pain are examples of these triggers. They're psychological states that can actually trigger a stress response. And it's this stress response that mindfulness is very effectively able to manage. So the good news that I'm trying to highlight here is that mindfulness, if we learn to recognize the triggering thoughts or behaviors and then switch off inappropriate activation of that response, then we can kind of start to calibrate things and hopefully bring things back to healthy, normal levels, get that human brain working. So there's been so much research that has looked at the benefits of mindfulness-based interventions. And they say that mindfulness can benefit anyone and everyone, and particularly people with arthritis. So there's been a lot of findings from different studies that suggest mindfulness can be a useful strategy for improving psychological distress, depressive symptoms, self-efficacy, well-being, quality of life, pain intensity, improve our ability to cope. There's even some suggestions it could possibly improve disease activity in your inflammatory types of arthritis. So this is why you are increasingly seeing these type of interventions being indicated in multidisciplinary treatment approaches. And this is why a lot of health professionals really encourage you to explore this to complement your current disease management plan. So there's a lot of benefits in terms of the evidence behind management of arthritis, but also management of celiac disease, fibromyalgia, diabetes, IBS, even cancer treatments. So stress, I think it's very unrealistic to say that we need to just not stress at all, or we need to reduce our stress levels. Stress is a very natural part of our existence, and everyone's going to experience it from time to time. So stress is usually triggered by things like unsettling circumstances, maybe life pressures, maybe it's a new diagnosis of something, or maybe it's being overloaded with responsibilities. When we are stressed, your body, it produces a certain hormone called cortisol. And so it's this cortisol that allows you to prepare for that fight or flight situation I was talking to you earlier about. So even though the situation is something you cannot fight or you cannot fly away from, it can sometimes manifest in an anxiety reaction, which for some people can result in those same kind of physical symptoms of increased heart rate, increased sweat production. It can cause trouble sleeping, or it can cause excessive worrying and ruminating. So there are different types of anxiety, and it does affect people differently, and people have different ways of coping with it. But one type of anxiety, it does activate a part of the brain which causes physical reactions. And so this is why sometimes when people say they have anxiety, they can also be experiencing rapid heart rates. It can cause you to feel a little bit shaky. It can cause you to feel dizzy. It can be really tricky when you're having an anxiety reaction to just calm down. But it's during these times, you don't actually need a thought-based strategy. We need physical strategies. And so there's so many different mindfulness activities like going outside, deep breathing activities, drinking a cold glass of water. If you've heard of grounding techniques where you go outside in nature and you ground yourself in nature, physical anxiety needs a physical strategy. And that's why some mindfulness techniques for some people work incredibly. Another type of anxiety is actually overthinking, could be jumping to conclusions. It could even be catastrophizing. We spoke a little bit about catastrophizing last week when we were on the mental health subject. And this is catastrophizing about our condition or about our future. Now, this thought-based anxiety is often linked with the what if mindset. So, what if exercise hurts my knee? Or what if I've woken up with pain today and now my day is ruined? This is where other mindfulness techniques can be really beneficial and they can really help. And so the idea is that you can have practice at redirecting and interrupting negative thoughts. If you can stabilize those thoughts, you'll realize that you're able to get your body settling down so it doesn't escalate, and we can kind of get a hold on that fight or flight response. So mindfulness, it's a very transformative practice. Simple way of thinking of it as it's a practice that involves mental exercise. So it's about calibrating that mental state, recalibrating those emotions. It's almost like, I always say, it's like the gym for the mind. We don't just go to the gym to enjoy the benefits of a 30-minute workout session. We actually go to the gym to achieve the benefits of fitness for 24 hours, or we go to the gym to improve our overall long-term health and well-being. So that's kind of the same approach we need to be taking for our mind, and that's why we encourage mindfulness. So it's a very powerful tool for bringing focus to the here. It encourages us to maintain an attitude characterized by acceptance, openness, non-judgment. It enables us to release negative thoughts, emotions, and distractions. And so the goal of mindfulness isn't to actually alter pain. It's not to, go into it thinking we're going to get rid of our pain, but it's ultimately about how you respond to that pain. It's about that relationship with it and any other kind of symptom for that matter. So mindfulness-based stress reduction and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, they're both structured mindfulness programs, but they have very different emphases. So MBSR for short, mindfulness-based stress reduction, it's a very specific 8-week course that contains a variety of mindfulness exercises within it to help people actually manage stress, reduce anxiety, improve overall well-being. And so the emphasis here is on mode of being as opposed to mode of doing. What that essentially means is that instead of actively pursuing specific outcomes like reducing pain through X, Y, and Z, or focusing on achieving results, it's just about taking you out of that mindset. It's taking you away from planning for the future, thinking about the past. It's just simply about being in that moment, accepting the current moment as it is, rather than just trying to change it or achieve something new. So MBCT is an adaptation of MBSR, except it's just a more therapeutic approach that combines mindfulness meditation with the principles of cognitive behavioral therapy. So the emphasis in this program is more on acceptance, and it's really about changing that dynamic with unwanted thoughts, feelings, self-limiting beliefs, and negative thinking patterns. So it's trying to help you avoid them or react to them. And so through learning different techniques under this program, you become more able to respond to them more intentionally and with a more skillful manner. And so this can over time help change the way you think and feel about certain situations, especially if it involves your pain or arthritis. So this is why they say this program might be a bit more appropriate for those who struggle with the comorbidities of anxiety and depression in arthritis. They're both very effective programs. They're built essentially on those same foundations and intended to be applied as an adjunctive therapy. So what I want to show you is actually the research that exists behind it. So I guess back in 2009, there was a really groundbreaking study that explored how an 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction program could help people dealing with different types of chronic pain. Now, this study was part of a larger project at a university's integrative medicine center, and the researchers wanted to actually see how MBSR could affect things like bodily pain, our health-related quality of life, psychological symptoms. And so the researchers looked at the patient's physical health and their symptoms before and after the meditation program was used. And they assessed these using very detailed surveys. Now, they looked at two main things. They looked at changes in health and symptoms before the meditation program and after the meditation program. And then they looked at whether these changes varied based on the type of chronic pain these people had. They looked at how the frequency of the meditation practice at home influenced the survey results as well. And the findings were really surprising. So researchers were really, I guess the results were really revealing, because people with arthritis, back pain, neck pain, and multiple types of pain actually saw significant improvements in things like pain intensity, daily functioning, and amongst these groups, those with arthritis experienced the most notable improvements in just quality of life. So interestingly, while practicing meditation more frequently at home, it was linked to better psychological well-being. It didn't significantly change the pain levels, but it suggests that regular practice is really important for mental health, and there are other factors that could, influence physical pain and quality of life. But this program had very long-term positive effects. And so this was exciting because it means that the skills and practices that were taken away from the program can continue to benefit people well beyond an 8-week course. So an MBSR program incorporates a lot of different meditation techniques and practices to help with reducing stress in the current moment, improving well-being. So some of these techniques include mindful breathing, body scanning, mindful eating, walking meditation, yoga, mindful movement, body awareness, mindful journaling, mindful communication. And so from what we can see with these techniques, you can basically practice mindfulness anywhere in your home. You can practice it while washing your dishes, and pretty much any activity you do in your day can become a mindful activity with enough practice. So, for example, while you're walking, has anyone ever tried, instead of listening to music or thinking about your to-do list, you focus on your body's movement and what you feel, hear, or see at that point in time? It could actually mean just paying attention to how wind hits your face, or listening to the sounds of birds chirping, or if you live near the beach, listening to the waves of the ocean. If you're washing dishes, it could be focusing more on how the water feels on your hands, or watching the bubbles fill the sink. Could be even smelling the smell of detergent. So these are, examples of practicing mindfulness in just your everyday activities. So there's a lot of evidence that these are the things that can help with pain management, stress reduction, improve coping skills, enhance self-awareness, better pain tolerance, improve sleep, even better physical function, reduce medication dependency, and long-term management. So MBCT, I guess this is the most widely evaluated psychological therapy for rheumatoid arthritis. Not to say it's just for people with RA, but people with OA and other types of arthritis. Now, this program is intended to help people develop more realistic and balanced attitudes and beliefs about the disease. So it's really intended to help replace unhelpful thoughts and behaviors with a lot more positive ones. So the goal is more around improving emotional regulation, which in turn can enhance the response to pain. It could boost motivation to engage in things like exercise, or help find a healthy balance between activity and rest. So while mindfulness alone may not significantly affect how much control people actually feel when they have over their pain, but combining CBT with mindfulness can be effective. So there's been a lot of research that shows people who use both CBT and mindfulness together benefit a whole lot more from their treatments. They experience better emotional regulation and more motivation to actually stay active and do all the things they need to do for that longer term self-management of their conditions. So there was a study back in 2022, so 2 years ago, that found cognitive behavioral therapy was way more effective than mindfulness-based stress reduction in reducing pain, disability, and depression in people with rheumatoid arthritis. And so what I guess we can take away from this is that both therapies have their benefits, but CBT might have an edge when it comes to certain outcomes. So given that there's a lot of promising science and evidence behind both MBCT, MBCBT and MBSR, these therapies are actually increasingly encouraged in healthcare. So there's evidence to actually support it. So a mindfulness-based cognitive therapy program, it does incorporate all the necessary skill building tools to combat psychological symptoms as they arise. And so people who learn these skills might be able to actually revert to these methods in times of real distress, or when faced with potentially overwhelming situations. So it can help with emotional regulation, pain management, stress reduction, preventing recurring depression, enhance coping skills, improve quality of life. And examples of MBCT interventions could be mindful meditation. It could be learning to be more aware of the stress response. It can be having a 3-minute breathing space. It does involve cognitive restructuring, and usually that's supported with a health professional, particularly a mental health professional or a psychologist or psychiatrist. And then there's the acceptance of self-compassion. And so while there's elements of mindfulness, there's also that therapeutic kind of flavor within these exercises. And really, it's going to be more ideal if it's guided by a professional, if you want to get the most benefit from this kind of intervention. It's often used as an adjunctive therapy for people who have history of depression or recurring depressive episodes. So that can be very beneficial for those comorbidities. So let's go here. Just lost my page. So when you feel yourself ever feeling overwhelmed, worried, or concerned, you can always do something to center yourself and help you feel just even 1% better. So you can become mindful by practicing just some of these things like breathing exercises or using a grounding technique wherever you are. And so it's super simple. And I would invite you all, if you're willing to participate in some of these strategies and exercises we have presented here. And the first ones are breathing exercises. So this is a really simple way to incorporate mindfulness into your day. It's a great way to start and end the day, actually. So even if you want to do it now or do it just before you go to bed, how you do a breathing exercise, I would encourage you to sit comfortably, relax, and focus on the sensation of your breath. So if you feel like practicing this exercise, take a deep inhale through your nose for 4 seconds. Pause. And exhale for 6 seconds. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. To get the most benefit from this breathing exercise, you can repeat this for at least 2 minutes. If you find your mind wandering through this exercise, just gently bring your attention back to your breath and just focus on feeling your lungs. Now, with gentle movement, some of the exercises that are really well known to incorporate mindfulness into them, Tai Chi and Qi Gong. So these exercises are very well known for not only helping facilitate balance, but they incorporate breathing techniques that help, connect you with your body. We also have the grounding technique. So before starting this exercise, just pay attention to your breathing. So slow, deep, long breaths can really help you maintain a sense of calm or help return to a calmer state. So I would encourage you to find your breath here and go through the following steps to help ground yourself. Once you have found your breath, I want you to acknowledge 5 things that you see around you. You can then acknowledge 4 things that you can touch around you. If you acknowledge 3 things you can hear, acknowledge 2 things you can smell. And then acknowledge 1 thing you can taste. So that's an example of a grounding technique, and it can be really great to go outside and practice this whenever you feel yourself getting overwhelmed or caught up in an anxiety reaction or your stress response.
Can I just break in? They actually call that, in one of the books I read, they call it the grounding pyramid. And they said you can add things or take things away. But yeah, they call it a pyramid and you work your way down.
I love that
it's
idea
really
of calling
cool.
it a pyramid. Yeah, it's a great way to visualize this technique as well. Another technique is a 2-minute body scan, which really focuses on the mind-body relationship. So it would be drawing attention to and focusing on body part by body part and until the whole body is scanned. So sometimes this body scan meditation can promote body awareness, stress awareness, and relaxation, when you're scanning your body, you can start from the top of your head and just focus on what tension exists in your head, and then breathe through any kind of tension that exists in that space. And then once you become aware of it, move down the body until you get to the toes. So this particular technique is actually really great for progressive muscle relaxation, breathing exercises, and just releasing that stress and tension if it's localized in the body. So some people will say you need 20 minutes a day, or some people say maybe 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at night. Some people even say 5 minutes. But research has explored the dose of mindfulness and how much we need, and found very comparable benefits in the group that implemented mindfulness at 20 minutes per day and the group implementing mindfulness at 5 minutes a day. And so although you're going to get more benefit from, of course, practicing it more throughout your day, when it comes to practicing it in your own lives, there's no one size fits all. The key is to really just find your balance, find something that works for you. Some people find that 10 minutes is all they need, and that's enough to get the benefits from this practice. Others might prefer shorter, more frequent sessions throughout the day. Some might prefer 30 to 40 minutes. So the most important aspect here is to cultivate a practice that you can actually sustain and can help you achieve your personal mindfulness goals. So if you're looking for somewhere to start, I've listed some of the places you can go to after this webinar to explore some of the guided mindfulness techniques they have. So Meditation Oasis, Calm, Headspace, Smiling Mind, Aura, Buddhify, Black Dog Institute. These all have offer programs and services in their organizations, and you will be able to find some mindfulness, guided mindfulness techniques in there. So just a quick summary, mindfulness is a state of being. There are 3 parts of the brain involved when it comes to the stress response, and also, I guess, rationalizing that stress response. So mindfulness is intended to help lessen that stress response. It does take practice, it does take time, but there is very good evidence behind it. Not just physically, but a lot of mental benefits. So can be beneficial for our physical health, managing arthritis, but also mental health. And last week we spoke about mental health, anxiety, depression being very common comorbidities in a lot of types of arthritis. So mindfulness based interventions, they are indicated for people who are highly stressed, have anxiety and chronic pain. And you can even feel free to explore this with your GP if you feel that you do often get caught up in anxiety reactions. There are people there to absolutely support you, and you know, tools and resources that are available that you can use to help overcome that. So I've got one last session of mindfulness before we finish. Let's just play this.
Hi, this is Dora. Today, we'll be trying a grounding technique to help settle your mind and body and rediscover a sense of balance whenever you need it most. No matter what's going on around you, whether you're experiencing feelings of anxiety or racing thoughts, you can always take comfort with this visualization intended to help you feel more grounded and balanced in this moment. Start by placing your feet on the floor or sitting in a comfortable position. Take a cleansing breath in and out. Closing your eyes and feeling the weight of gravity, feeling the earth supporting you. Now visualizing a strong, sturdy tree planted firmly into the ground. its roots anchoring deep down into the earth and its elements. Leaves drifting away in the breeze. And just like those leaves, thoughts will always come and go. Feelings will always come and go. But from this anchored point of view, we can take a step back from those thoughts and see them from what they are, rather than what we expect them to be. By acknowledging them and letting them go, we're able to create a deeper connection with the mind while staying firmly rooted in the present moment and embracing all the different aspects of our lives. You can always come back to this whenever you need to reconnect to a sense of groundedness or reconnect with your environment and surroundings. Thank you for watching. Have a healthy, happy day.
Wonderful. So what I might do is I'll stop the recording here. And I understand some people have to leave.